Hi everyone, I am Chris and this is Simply Classic, and I am super excited to bring you my new pattern, the AllyBee. This pattern is a Brahmin inspired bag, and I've made several different versions here to show you some options. This bag right here is the one we make in the video. It is an embossed pink crocodile, and I'm actually going to have some maker's kits available for this bag, and it'll give you everything you need to make this exact bag, so stay tuned for that. This bag here is another version. This was, actually, it's my personal bag. It's made from I guess you call it a light gray crocodile ostrich, and this is from Bolt's Bags. This here is also from Bolt's Bags. The fabric is from Bolt's Bags. This is the copper penny with a gorgeous animal print. On this bag here, to hold the shoulder strap on, I'm actually using 3 rivets. Here's a concho, and this is a concho, and I sell these conchos on my website. Y'all can really get decorative here. You're going to see some of my testers came up with some great ideas as to how to kind of add a little something something here. And then this final bag here is actually made from a cotton canvas for the main part of the bag, and then it has, for the shoulder strap and the bottom band in the bottom, it is actually a faux leather. So if you do not have an industrial machine, you can make this bag with a domestic. There's going to be a couple places where you might have a little bit of a problem, so know your machine, know your materials, and don't feel like you can't make this bag if you don't have an industrial machine. You certainly can, just by changing out these materials. So let's go over some of the features of the bag. This bag can be worn in 2 different ways. It can be worn over the shoulder, and it also can be worn as a sling. Now, the best part about it being worn as a sling is that back here you have a pocket which fits quite a bit. I have a iPhone, and it just swallows that up. So you can, doesn't matter the size of your iPhone, it's going to fit in here. You can put your keys in here, all different kinds of options there. But when you wear it as a sling, it's against your back, and even as you wear it as a shoulder bag, it is against your body. So it's protected from pickpocketers. To open the bag, you simply pull the drawstring and open it up. And inside, it is a very roomy bag. On one side, there is a slip pocket, and then on the other side, there is a zipper pocket, and then we have a key fob as well. So the instructions on how to make this bag include all of the things I just mentioned, and it is just a classy bag. For all of these options here, I did use, I think even in this one, I used linen for my lining. And as you all know, I sell linen on my website. The one thing that's a little bit different with the actual rivets being held is I went ahead and riveted all the way through the bag and added the shoulder strap on last. The instructions show how to add the shoulder strap so the hardware is hidden. However, if you're a little unsure of that, you can certainly add the shoulder strap last and just rivet through to the back of the bag. No problem at all. Okay? So, I hope you enjoy the pattern. It is available June 1st, 2022 on my website. And if you have any questions about constructing the pattern as you get into it, don't hesitate to shoot me an email. My email is chris@simplyclassic.net. That's CHRIS@simplyclassic.net. The pattern's broken down into 5 steps, and we're going to go over the pattern pieces per step. So step 1 is the strap, the shoulder strap, and the strap adjuster. For that, you're going to need the 2 pieces that you cut out for your shoulder strap, and right now they're not cut to the pattern piece, they're just cut into rectangles, and you're also going to need your pattern piece. You're also going to need your strap adjuster piece. Now, this strap adjuster, if you want, this is to where the bag is a crossbody bag. So if you want this to be a little bit larger, then you want to increase the size of this adjuster strap. And I do have a couple of different measurements in the pattern for that. And then you're also going to need your strap connector. So those are all the pattern pieces for step 1. Step 2 is actually creating the back pocket. So the pattern pieces that you're going to need for that are the exterior pocket lining front and the exterior pocket lining back. One of these is slightly larger than the other. You're also going to need your top back piece. Now, on the top back piece and the sides and the front, there are places here for grommets. You want to cut those out and you want to mark it on the back piece. And I just used a Tandy marking pen, a Tandy silver marking pen to do that. So I have that marked on here. And then you're also going to need the back bottom. Now your back bottom piece, I'm using Decoville Heavy. And if you can see here, that Decoville Heavy does not go all the way up to the top. You're going to draw a line on the bottom, a 1/2 inch from the bottom. And then you're going to place that Decoville Heavy again right on top of that line, and it will not go all the way to the top. And that's okay. You want that. So these pieces are step number 2. Step number 3 is completing the exterior of the bag. So for that, you're going to need your back pocket piece from step number 2. You're also going to need your front panel piece. And on this piece, the Decoville Heavy goes the entire way. It stays out of your seam allowances, but it's the full piece, okay? And you also have markings on here for your grommet placement. You're also going to need your 2 side pieces. Now, this bag's a little bit different. You have 2 side pieces cut exactly the same measurement. Do not put any kind of stabilizer on this. And this is going to allow the bag to fold in properly. If you put stabilizer on here, you're going to have a hard time with it folding right. It's going to, in my testing, it did not look right. So on these pieces, you also have grommet placement holes, so make sure you mark those with some kind of removable ink pen. You're also going to need your bottom band, and the bottom band has Decoville Heavy out of the seam allowances, but the full length. You're going to need your bottom piece, and this is a bucket bag style, so your bottom piece is rounded, okay? You're going to put Decoville Heavy, but keep it outside the seam allowances. And the pattern piece does, all the pattern pieces have the markings on where to cut your Decoville. Or if you prefer to use foam, that would be a good alternative to Decoville Heavy. So those pieces there will finish the exterior of the bag. The next step is the lining. And for the lining, we're going to need our lining bottom. And for this, I'm using some linen that I sell on my website. And I also have woven fuse 2 fused to the back of all of these pieces. Okay, so you have the bottom. You're also going to have the main lining piece. And this main lining piece is big. Okay, it's the full circle of the bag. You're also going to need pocket pieces for your interior zipper pocket. And you're going to need 1 piece for your interior slip pocket. Now, these pieces are cut from the same pattern piece. To cut the zipper pockets, you're going to just cut 2 of the pattern piece. And for the actual slip pocket, you're going to cut 1 on the fold, okay? So just make sure you watch that. And then you're also going to need your zipper overlay. for the interior zipper. You're going to need your slip pocket accent piece. You're going to need your key fob piece. And then you're going to need your upper lining piece. Now the upper lining piece is actually not cut straight. Okay, the short ends are on a little bit of an angle, and the reason for that is to make sure you don't have to take a larger seam allowance when you go to sew your lining together. So this angle takes care of all of that for you. And this is the only place where I'm putting Decoville Light, is on this upper lining piece. Okay, and then the last step is the actual drawstring and the drawstring holder. So on the drawstring holder, I have a line down the center and I put some double-sided tape. The drawstring, I'm going to be doing the same thing. And because this crocodile I'm using, it's an embossed crocodile, I do have some of this available as well. And I'm actually going to be putting together some maker's kits for these, and I'm going to have it on the website. I have some items coming, they're not here yet, so it's actually going to be a pre-order, but it's not going to be super long before we get everything in. But because it's embossed, it's a little sticky, and I'm afraid that the actual drawstring won't slide through the drawstring holder. So I'm going to do the drawstring in a black that I have, black faux. We'll see how that looks. I think that'll be nice. So you'll need these two pieces, and then you'll need the rest of the pieces from the bag that we put together to finish up everything. That's step 5. Now, in addition, you're going to need a number 5 zipper for your interior zipper pocket. And for hardware, you're going to need grommets. Now, in the maker's kits that I'm putting together, I'm actually going to be providing you with some screw together grommets. So that way, if you don't have a grommet press, if you're not super confident about hitting these grommets and getting them good and straight, you can still put grommets in. And I have a video that I released last week, and it shows you how to do that. So refer back to that video and I'll show you how to put the grommets in. So if you want, you can put purse feet. I am going to put purse feet in this, and you just put them in according to whatever kind of purse feet you have. You know, there's screw in, press in, and then you have these kind of tab looking ones. That's what I'm going to use. You're going to need a rectangle ring, and depending on the thickness of the faux that you're using, you might need an extra wide one. And this extra wide one will be included in my maker's kit. You're also going to need a rectangle ring, and you're going to need a swivel clip. And then lastly, you're going to need a D-ring. And if you want to put some kind of hardware on the front of your bag, where we discussed in the introduction, I have these screw-in conchos available, and they are on my website. I have a couple of different styles of those. And then of course you need your zipper, and if you have a logo, you want to put that on there as well. Okay, and those are all of the pieces. So we're going to go ahead and get started with step 1, which is the shoulder strap and strap adjuster. Okay, the first thing we want to do is take our 2 pieces that we cut for our shoulder strap, and we're going to glue them together, wrong sides together. So I'm going to get my little rag here, and I'm going to just put some glue right along this. Okay. I'm going to just kind of use my finger and spread this out so I don't get any glue clumps anywhere. And if you have a spatula or something like that, you can certainly use that instead of your finger. Okay, wipe it off. And now we're going to place these two pieces, wrong sides together. Don't worry about matching up the edges perfectly. I mean, do the best you can to kind of get them close, but we're going to actually be cutting out our shoulder strap from these pieces. Now, one thing I do want to make sure is that my patterns are the same on each side, which they did. I put that on right, and then I'm just going to kind of press this down, and I'm going to set that aside to dry. And while it's drying, let's go ahead and take our strap connector. I drew a line down the center and put double-sided tape, and I'm just going to fold this to the center. So when you're done, you're going to have something that looks like this. We're going to do the same thing with our adjustable shoulder strap. Now, if you noticed, I had one piece of double-sided tape on this, and I have two pieces here. The reason why is because when I top stitch this shoulder strap, I'm going to be stitching down both sides, and I want to keep my tape out of my seam allowance. Even though my machine will go through the tape without a problem, there's no sense in taking a chance of it getting gummed up. So I always put 1/4 inch tape down any of my straps, just shy of the line. But whenever I do a strap connector, I usually just put a piece of 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch down the center, because when you go to sew these two sides, the tape's in the middle here. You don't have any chance of getting it, of sewing over it. So we're going to do the same thing with the strap adjuster. We're going to go ahead and fold it to the center. And when you fold this, make sure that you're lining up your edges here. Okay, you're going to line up the edge with the edge, the short edge with the short edge here. And I'm just going to fold it just shy of that line. Okay, I don't want to fold it all the way to the line. I'm going to fold it just shy of the line. And that's going to give me room when I go to fold it again. It's going to give me room to fold it without it buckling. Okay, and just make sure when you do this that you're not pulling. You're just taking your fabric and you're just basically folding it over on itself. Okay, if you pull, you're going to get a twisted strap. Most twisting on straps starts at the table. It starts with how you fold it. Not always, but most of the time. So I'm going to make sure that my edges, my short edges, match here as well. Get that all nice and stuck on there. And then I'm going to do the other side. This pink embossed crock I actually found when I went to New York City, and it is really fabulous. Originally I did not get it because I felt like it might have been a little bit too much, but y'all wanted it and a lot of you have already bought it, and so I really do appreciate that. I think that it's going to make a stunning bag. Okay, so now that I have both sides, I'm going to just pull this up, and you'll see with that center, see the center line there? Those two edges don't meet. It's going to be a lot easier to fold this in half. Than it would be if you took and you actually met those edges. Now, if you want to maybe spruce up your edges, what you can do before you sew this is you can actually take a punch, a leather punch, and you can punch a rounded edge here. And I would do that before you sew it, because then when you sew it, you can actually sew around that rounded edge. It makes it look really nice. Or you can just leave it straight, just like this. And what I'm going to do is leave it straight, but I'm also going to stitch across this to hold it down real tight. And that way when I edge paint this, I won't have any gaps. Okay, so now let's see how this is doing. I'm gonna make sure it's dry enough that it's not gonna come apart on me here. I think it's still a little bit wet, so I'm just gonna let that dry a little bit longer, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch down both sides of my strap connector and both sides of my adjustable strap. I always use an edge guide here. I always put my needle exactly where I want it and then go ahead and slide my edge guide over. Then we're going to do the other side as well. And then let's go ahead and do our adjustable strap. I'm going to turn here at the end. And come up the other side. Okay, so I have this completed, and I'm just going to make sure that my edges look nice and straight and burn any threads here. And if the edges are not straight, I will just go ahead and trim them. Basically, I want to be able to rub my finger across here and just feel that it's nice and straight. And that's just going to make for a better edge coat when you go to edge coat that. I'll trim this one just a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to set these aside, and we're going to get a Tandy marking pen or some kind of marking pen that will erase. And we're going to line up our shoulder strap, and we're going to trace around it. So I'm going to use a Tandy marking pen, and I'm just going to go ahead and trace around this. the little scales on this alligator makes this line a little bit crooked, but that's okay. Okay, so now when I take this away, you should be able to see that line. Now you might not be able to see it, but I'm not sure that you can, but it's on there. So now what I'm going to do is sew around following that line, but I'm not going to sew on top of the line. I'm actually going to sew about 1/4 of an inch to the inside of this line, all the way around. I'm not going to start here at the top because this is actually where the front of the bag, this is going to be on the front of the bag right here. So I'm going to start a little bit further down. And I'm just going to come in, like I say, 1/4 of an inch, and my foot, the edge of my foot is 1/4 of an inch, so I'm just going to line the edge of my foot up with this line and go all the way around. Makes sense? Hopefully. Now when I go around this curve, I'm actually going to just hand crank. So I'm just going to move this a little bit, hand crank, move it a little bit more. Let me do 1 or 2. And just take it real slow around these curves. Now, if you wanted to do a rounded edge down here, like on your adjuster, your strap adjuster, you could certainly do that. I would suggest you go ahead and punch that before you sew this, just like on the handle, or the shoulder strap rather. Now from here you want to take a really good pair of scissors, or take maybe your rotary cutter, you could do it with that as well, and we're going to trim 1/8 of an inch from your stitch line. So basically that's going to be between your marked line and your stitch line, right down the middle. Try not to be choppy with this. Try to make long, even cuts as you go, okay? And basically we're doing this way because if you watch my edge coat video that I posted last week or the week before, you know that one of the things that makes for a beautiful edge is to have a nice, even edge. So by making the handle this way, which means we are not cutting it and then trying to match the edges, we're actually sewing it and then cutting it to the shape we want, it's going to give us a really pretty edge. You see I'm really taking my time with this. Try to make long cuts. Okay. And that is going to be our shoulder strap. So from here, what you want to do is go ahead and refer back to my edge coat video, put some base coat on here, and then we're going to stop as you do step 2 and do our back pocket, put that together. We're going to be letting that dry, and then in between steps, we'll just go back and continue to put base coats and actual final coats until we have our shoulder strap done by the end. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and put my first base coat on and then move on to step 2. Okay, go ahead and gather all of your back pocket pieces. This is step 2. You're going to take your back piece. Now make sure it's the back piece. You'll know because your decaville will not be going all the way up to the top. Okay, you're going to come to the bottom here, and this is where we're going to be working. So flip this back over, and you want to find the center. So I'm just going to make a little clip here. And then I'm going to mark 1/2 of an inch up from that clip. So 1/2 of an inch up, and I'm just going to make a line right here. I want to take my strap connector, and I'm going to line it up right on that line, just like this. And we're going to stitch across here at about 1/8 of an inch. Be careful that you do not go beyond your strap connector. Okay, so you just want to stay kind of between your stitch lines here, and maybe go one direction and then back stitch back. Okay, so this is what we have. And we're going to put our D-ring on now. And then we're going to fold this over and line up the other short edge with the bottom. Okay, so put our D-ring. We're going to line this up with the bottom. I'm going to put one clip on here. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. And now we're just going to go ahead and baste this on the bottom. Now, the reason why we're doing it this way is because we want to keep the bulk out of our seam. So we don't want both ends of this strap connector to be in the seam. So from here, we're going to measure down 1/2 inch from this fold. Okay, so I'm just going to measure 1/2 inch, and I'm going to make a dot, and we're going to actually rivet this on. And when we rivet it, we're going to go all the way through to the back here. So let me go ahead and make my hole. Put a rivet. Now, because your Decoville heavy is within that 1/2 inch, you should be okay here. That if you'd like, you can go ahead and put another piece of Decoville if you think it might pull through. Okay, so I'm going to go set this rivet, and then we're going to move on to sewing a pocket on. Okay, now let's sew all of these together. You have 2 pocket lining pieces. One is a little bit taller than the other one, so be paying attention here as to which one you're sewing where. You're going to take your top back piece and you're going to put it right sides together. You're going to sew it right sides together to the exterior pocket back. That's going to be your shorter piece. Excuse me. It's going to be your longer piece. Okay, make sure you're picking the right piece. The exterior pocket back. Okay, so I have all my pieces laid out here. Your 2 lining pieces for your pocket, one is slightly larger than the other, slightly taller. So you're going to sew the shorter piece, which is the exterior pocket back piece, to your top back piece. And you're going to sew the other longer piece, which is your exterior pocket front, to your actual bottom back piece. Rewind me and listen to that again if you're not sure what I said. Basically, the longer piece goes with the longer piece and the shorter piece goes with the shorter piece, okay? That's an easy way to remember it. So we're just going to clip this together and we're going to sew both of these seams. And I do give you the seam allowance in the pattern. Now, anytime you're going to sew with a piece that has Decoville on it, Decoville heavy, I'm always going to sew with that piece on the top because I do not want to sew over my Decoville heavy, and by seeing it on this side, I'll be able to ensure that I'm not going to do that. It'll just make the bag turn better and give it some crisper edges. So let's sew these on. And on this piece, your decoville is not going all the way up to the top, so it doesn't really matter which side you sew from. Okay. You want to go ahead and flip these pieces and make sure that your seam allowance is going towards the lining, and we're going to top stitch right on top of the lining. Whenever I top stitch two pieces like this, I'm actually kind of pulling the pieces apart a little bit to make sure that this seam is nice and flat. I'm going to repeat. Okay, so I want to take my back bottom piece, and what I'm going to do is take the lining part, the lining bottom, and the bottom edge of the bag, and I'm going to actually just match those up. And when you do, you will find that where this is going to fold is right at the edge of your decoville. So it's going to give you a nice crisp pocket edge. And we're going to top stitch that. Okay, from here, we're going to take and match up the bottom of both of these pieces. So I'm going to match the bottom, match these sides, and we're going to baste this together. Now, I give you a measurement in the pattern as to how far down this pocket piece is from the top. So just measure that to make sure that you are on track. And I am good to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and baste all the way around and baste this pocket on. And just like that, step 2 is done. We have a nice pocket, and you can see there's no lining peeking through anywhere. And this is a nice deep pocket for your cell phone. Look at how deep that is. Okay, so step 2 is complete. Let's continue on to step 3. Okay, in step 3, we're going to finish the exterior of the bag. So I'm going to put the bottom aside for just a second. I'm going to put this bottom band aside, and I'm going to be working with just the front. Here's our bottom assembly, the front and the sides. So I'm going to take my front, I've marked my grommet placement up here, and each of my sides, these are the top, this is where I marked my grommet placement. So I'm going to put my front right sides together with one of my sides. And because my front has the decoville and my sides don't have any, I'm going to stitch from the front. You're going to fold your seam allowance towards the side. So basically towards the side panel that has no decoville. That's where your seam allowance is going to go. And we're going to top stitch. And as I'm top stitching, I'm again pulling these sides apart to make sure that it's nice and flat. And I'm also making sure the seam allowance stays towards the side. Okay, so now I'm going to take my other side piece and I'm going to attach it to the other side of my front. I'm going to flip this over because I want to stitch from this side, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. And then from here, put your seam allowance towards your side panel and top stitch. Okay, this is what we have so far. And now what we're going to do is attach our bottom panel. So, or your bottom band. So take your band, and as you can see here, I made sure that I matched the pattern placement, okay? When you cut these pieces, go ahead and cut your band first, line it up. If you're doing something like this, some kind of crocodile, or you have some kind of pattern you want to match, go ahead and line that up in the center of your band. And then right on top of that, cut your front piece. And then you should line up perfectly. Now I'm going to find the center, which I can see where the center is here, but I'm going to go ahead and find the center, make a mark, and a clip. And I'm going to do the same thing on the band just to make sure that those centers do match up, because when I cut this I was very particular about how I did it. Now I want to see which way I want this band going. Let's see. I want it going this way. So go ahead and line this up and we'll mark. So now I'm going to put the band and the front assembly here, right sides together, matching my marks. I'm going to clip it together. I'm going to stitch this on. Now, I do have Decoville Heavy on this band. The only place I have Decoville here is on this front. So I'm going to actually stitch from the band side because I have a longer run here of the Decoville, and I want to make sure I don't stitch on top of that. Now, one thing I forgot to mention too is that whenever you have a seam like this, you can actually cut some of this bulk out. Let me zoom you in so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's this where we stitched our front panels together here, and then we top stitched. So I've got this seam here, and I want to cut some of this bulk out. So before I sew over this, I'm just going to, at an angle, come in and just clip that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Just clip it. Just going to make this a little easier when we go to top stitch. Okay, from here, we're going to fold the bottom band down. Okay, we're going to fold the bottom band down, and we want the seam allowance to go towards the bottom band. And you may have to work with it a little bit to make it do that, but it will do it. I'm just going to make sure it's pointed in the right direction. Alright, so we now have our front part of the bag completed. If you want to put a bag tag on, I would suggest doing it either right around here above your band or right here on your band. Either one of those places would work. You could also maybe put it on the shoulder strap, but I think that you're probably going to have better luck with some kind of decorative piece there, whether it's some rivets or a concho, or one of the testers did like a flower here. It was really pretty. So I would say you're probably going to be better off in one of these two areas here for your actual bag tag. Before we sew our back on, I went ahead and clipped the bolt out of this bottom band seam on both sides. I'm going to do the same thing with the pocket part here. I'm going to go ahead and clip the bulk out on each side. So it's just a little clip there. So go ahead and attach your back assembly to your front assembly. We're going to go ahead and line this up, clip it in place, and stitch. Now this part is optional. You can go ahead and flip this and make sure your seam allowance is going towards your side seam again and top stitch here. But when you go to do this side, you're going to have to top stitch in the tunnel. Okay, so what I mean by that is you're going to be sewing this, then you're going to have to top stitch here in the tunnel. I'm going to do that because I want to show you how to do it. But if you don't think you can do that, or your machine isn't going to be able to handle it, or whatnot, don't top stitch this side seam. And then you don't have to top stitch the other one. This is in the back, so it's not as big of a deal, okay? But I'm going to go ahead and do it so you can see what I'm doing here. Now, if you have a walking foot machine, when you get to this seam right here, where the bottom band attaches to the bottom, you've got some bulk. We did cut it out, but if you have a walking foot, it may eat up the leather or faux leather. So be prepared with a piece of scrap. And once I get over that seam, before my presser foot hits that back seam, the back bulk, I'm just going to put it on there, okay? And that avoids having any problems with your foot eating your vinyl. All right, so let's attach the other side. Okay, so this is probably the trickiest part of this entire bag. We need to stitch in the tunnel, top stitch in the tunnel. So I'm going to make sure that my seam allowance is going towards the side. And the way I usually try to do this is I back into it. And what I mean by that is I don't start here and go down into the tunnel. Instead, I'm going to raise my presser foot and I'm just going to pull this all the way through. Kind of maneuvering it as I go until I am at the top of this seam. Okay, so here I am at the top. I am going to put my needle down in my presser foot here, and I'm going to move the camera so you can see what I'm seeing right now. Okay, so I actually have you behind my machine right now, looking at the presser foot, okay? You can see it in there. So here is the end of the fabric, okay? And you can see the back of the machine here. And I'm just going to, as I stitch, do the same thing, pull this apart. And as I get further down this seam, it's going to get easier and easier and easier until I get down to the end here. Here, that might help. Okay, so you can see the back of my machine here. You can see I'm at the top of that seam. And then I'm just going to stitch all the way down. So as I sew down the seam, it's relieving the pressure on the back, right? It's relieving that awkwardness. And you have plenty of room to do this in the bag, so if you want to give it a try, go for it. And see, now I'm towards the end, and I don't have this pulling anymore, and I'm going to be able to get this finished up easily. There's my bulk, so I'm going to put this behind. Okay, we are back to normal here. I'm going to go ahead and cut the bulk out of these seams here, because now we're going to sew our bottom on. So fold your bottom like a taco first. Mark your centers of these long edges. And then fold it like a hot dog to find the centers of the other edges. Okay, we know where the center of the bottom is because we have our strap connector on there. So I'm going to find the center of the top, or the center of the front, not the top, because this is now the band. So I can see where the center of that is from my pattern. I'm just going to make a little clip right there. And I'm going to make sure that matches up at the back, which it does. And then I'm going to match up the back and the front to find where the sides are. I'm just going to clip that. And clip this. Okay. So take your bottom, and you want the longer edge of your bottom to be in the front and the back. So I'm going to start out by just clipping the back here. And put 2 clips. I'm going to go to the front and put 2 clips. Do the same thing on these sides. There's one, and then the other. Okay, so now we need to fit in. You can see these edges are sticking out. We need to fit this in. The way to do that is you're always going to clip your straight edge. So this is the curved edge piece. This is the straight piece, and we're just going to make little clips. We're going to make them about halfway up. You don't want to go all the way up to the decaville because we want to sew along this decaville. You're just going to go about halfway, and that's going to allow this straight edge to spread and then fit this curved edge. So I'm just going to, there's no perfect formula, you just make a bunch of clips. And you're better off to do a little shallow first, and then if they're not deep enough, just go back and make them a little deeper. Okay? And then you're just going to fit this in. And see how those little angles spread? That's what you want. And once it spreads, it fits this perfectly. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing for the other 3 edges. We're just going to clip, 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 clip. Now this side clipping, you've got some extra bulk here. You're going to need some bigger scissors for that. All right, and now we're just going to clip it in place, spreading those little clips apart. You gotta, when you do curves like this, the curved edge is longer than the straight edge. So if you were to actually measure, you would find that one is longer, it's bigger. So the only way to make that work is to make your straight edge bigger to fit around the curve. And the only way to do that is to clip. Okay, so we have it all clipped in place. And this curve is not, it is a curve, but don't let it intimidate you. It's a very gradual curve, so if you struggle with curves, I still think you're going to be okay with it. I am going to stitch from this side though. Okay, so I'm going to actually kind of fold this in and then stitch along. I don't want to stitch from the bottom. Even though I have decaville on the bottom, by doing this, it's going to allow these to lay flat and help this top part spread so that you can actually stitch closer to your decaville. Okay, whenever I stitch curves, I like to use these hemostats. Sometimes it helps to actually pull this top layer to the bottom layer. So I'm going to keep these handy in case I need them. And I'm going to start on one of the straight edges. So don't be afraid to kind of manhandle your bag a little bit. You may need to do that. And if you want to staple this, you can, although I don't really think you're going to need to. What you might need to do is to stitch the first round maybe closer to the edge to get it all sewn on, and then do your second round close to your decaville. Whatever you're most comfortable with is fine. I am going to do 2 stitches, 2 rows. I'm going to do the first one hopefully getting nice and close to the decaville, and then I'm going to do a second kind of reinforcement stitch just about 1/8 of an inch away from that. So when you come around the edges, stop and lift your foot, rearrange your bag, do whatever you need to, to get this nice and flat here, okay? Make sure whenever you pause, your needle is down. So I'm going to lift and just adjust a little bit. All right, here we go around the last curve. And then if I were going to use these, what I would do is to actually take just this top layer, kind of lock them in, and then just pull a little bit. Keep those layers together. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and do a second round about 1/8 of an inch away from that edge. And I don't have to worry about tucks this time around because everything's already sewn down. If you maybe didn't get as close as you would have liked to on one of these curves, now would be the time to go ahead and do it. Okay, so from here, we're just going to trim these seam allowances down. And you want to trim them to about 1/8 of an inch away from the second stitch that you did. And because you have curved edges here, you really don't want to skip this step. That's just going to help these curves lay flatter once we turn the bag. Okay, so at the edge here, at the end of our trimming, get all this in the trash. All right, y'all. I'm going to go ahead and cut my bulk out of this top, these little top areas in the back and on the front. Now this bag has a drop-in lining, and the main reason why is because of the shoulder part being here, the shoulder strap being attached. If you want to put hardware, you kind of need the opportunity to do that before you stitch the bag together. It would be hard to put that on and then turn the bag through a zipper pocket or through the bottom. And because this is a rounded bottom, it's going to be hard also to leave an opening in there. So it's a drop-in lining, but this bag is wide enough. You've got a lot of girth here that you can easily do that on a flatbed machine. When you go to stitch this final, you're gonna not have any problems pushing this out of the way and stitching to get it all top stitched together. Okay, I do like to just kind of feel my corners here and make sure everything feels good before I turn it, because I don't want to turn it any more times than I have to. Okay, all that feels good. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to take some 1/2 inch double-sided tape and place it all on the top here. That way when I roll this down, it'll stay. So I'm just going to go all the way. Now you're going to have a nice crisp edge on the front and the back because of your decoville. Your sides don't have decoville. So it's going to be a little more difficult to figure out where to fold and how to fold those. I haven't had a problem with just folding the front, folding the back, and then kind of pulling it taut and the sides kind of fold where they're supposed to. But if you're concerned about it, you want to go ahead and take your ruler now 1 inch down on the sides. Okay, you want to kind of go like this. And so now you will know when you fold this where that 1/2 inch mark is, okay? So if you want to do that, go ahead and do that along your sides. Just mark this just to kind of give you a guideline. And like I said, I hadn't had a problem with this. I think you'll be fine if you don't do this, just in case you do. Okay? So now we can turn it. So let's turn this thing and see how it looks. Okay, here we are. So I'm going to just take and peel the back of this tape off and fold this down. Let's go ahead and do this now. So I'm going to fold it right along this decoville here in the back. You can feel that edge and it gives you a nice crisp edge. Okay, just like that. So I'm going to do the back. I'm going to do the front. Same way. Pull it right along that edge. And then as you pull these sides, it's going to kind of tell you where it wants to fold. But now that I have this line, I can certainly use that as a guide. Okay. Do not do a line on this side, so I'm just going to pull it and kind of let it fold here. All right. Fantastic. Okay, first steps in the lining are going to be to do the pockets. So I'm going to take my zipper and place it wrong side down on the right side of the zipper pocket. And I'm going to stitch this. Now I'm going to stitch this on my domestic machine because my industrial doesn't like thin fabrics like this. It doesn't do well. So I'm just going to stitch this on. Then I'm going to turn it and I'm going to make sure that my seam allowance is going towards the pocket. Okay, and I'm going to top stitch it. I'm going to come back and do the same thing for the other piece. I'll put the wrong side of this side of the zipper on the right side of the pocket, and make sure when you do this now your pocket edges line. Okay, I'm going to stitch that on and I'm going to flip this up. Oh, let me clip this for you so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, then I'm going to flip it up, and both of these seams here will be top stitched down. So when you're done, you're going to see the right side of the zipper and the wrong side of your pockets, and the wrong side of the zipper and the right side of your pockets. Okay, so I'll do that, and then on the slip pocket, I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm just going to stitch these two sides together. And again, I'm going to do this on my domestic, so just like this. Okay, I'm just going to stitch here, I'm going to stitch here. Okay, I have the pocket sewn. I put my zipper pull on. This is what it looks like. We're going to set it aside for just a minute. And here's the slip pocket. So I'm going to fold this edge right on the stitching line, hold that down with my thumb and finger, and poke that through to turn it. Same thing on this edge, give you a nice crisp corner there. You may have to just use a turner here just to poke a little bit, and good to go. Okay, I'm going to go press this. I'm going to sew the top closed, and then I'm going to press it, and then we'll put the top accent piece on. So before I put the accent piece on, I do want to press it just because I don't want to accidentally burn my vinyl. So this is the top accent piece. I'll set that aside. This is the key fob, optional key fob piece. If you want to have this, then you want to go ahead and put some double-sided tape. So I'm going to use my 1/4 inch double-sided tape. I'm just going to fold this in half. Now, once you do this, if you want to go through and edge coat and paint these edges, you certainly can. I usually don't worry about it. It's on the inside of the bag. I usually make sure that it's pointing down. So when I stitch it in the bag, I stitch it with this pretty side up and this side down. I don't really think you need to, but you certainly can. It is your bag. Okay, so I'm going to stitch this. And then we'll put a clip on it. Okay, that'll fit good. So, stitch this down. I'm going to just put a clip on here, my swivel clip, and got some threads here. Cut those. Okay. And I'm just going to rivet this on. All right, I'm going to go set this rivet, and then this will be done. Okay, I ironed my slip pocket, and I'm going to take my accent piece and draw a line down the center of it. I'm going to put some double-sided tape on each side. We're going to put this on. Now, when I line this up, I'm going to actually, kind of like the adjustable strap, I'm not going to line this up on the line. I'm going to be just shy of the line, so that when I fold it, my two edges will match. Okay, so see how that's just shy of the line? And then just fold this over. Okay, now we're just going to top stitch on this. Cut off my little wings here. And then I'm going to set this aside. Okay, take your long piece, your long main panel piece, or main lining piece, and you're going to fold it in half and mark the centers, both the top and the bottom. Okay, then from here, you want to take one side and line it up with that center mark. And then mark the center of these two folds here. So essentially what we're doing is kind of quartering this. Then we're going to do the same thing with the other side. We're going to fold it into the center. And then just clip our little centers here. Okay, from here, we're going to work with 1/2 of this piece first. So take your zipper overlay and put some double-sided tape on each side. You're going to measure down, and I give you the measurement in the pattern right on that center mark, and you're going to lay your overlay down, centered on that point. Okay, make sure it's even all the way across and straight. And then make sure your bottom half is straight as well. Okay, so from here we're going to stitch around the outside of this rectangle. Turn it. Cut these threads so they don't bunch up everywhere. And go ahead and finish this off. Okay. So now let's cut out the center. So I'm just going to make a little snip here, and then make sure the tip of my scissors goes underneath the overlay. I'm going to flip this around and just kind of cut sideways here. Make sure you don't cut your overlay. And I'm just going to pull this up, and then, well, you still can't see. There you go. I'm going to pull this up, and we're going to cut this off. This does not have to be pretty. All you're trying to do is to make sure that you cannot see your lining through the front. Okay, so that's what your back looks like, and here's your front. And it always looks so pretty from the front. So let's set our zipper. We're going to put some double-sided tape on here. want my zipper closing to the left. So I'm going to place it in there and center it as best as I can. And this is always my favorite part of bag making. Not. All right, I can live with that. Make sure your pocket's open on the back. Okay, don't close it yet. And we're gonna now stitch on the inside of this rectangle. Move your zipper pull out of the way. Okay. So from here, we're going to close this zipper pocket. Since we're doing a drop-in lining, we do not need to keep the bottom open. So we're just going to fold this down. Go ahead and clip our sides. You're going to have extra. That's okay, just cut that off. Okay, so I'm going to flip this way. I'm going to pull this back. And I'm going to stitch over my zipper teeth. I'm going to come down, turn, and go up the other side. Okay, if you have any excess on your pocket, you can go ahead and trim that off. I'm just going to trim off this little bit of zipper tape here. And then just burn these edges. Okay, so we got our zipper pocket on one side. So now we're going to go to the other side. So here's our center. We're going to keep going to the other marks we made. and we're going to put our slip pocket in. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to measure from the top. Now this pocket is big enough that if you wanted to make a small pen pocket, you could. So you can do a pen pocket and like a cell phone pocket. I am going to do that because I think that helps. At least it helps me in my bags. I like having a little pen pocket. So I'm just going to see about what that would be. Okay, we're going to go ahead and stitch this on. All right, here's our pocket. Now, I always like to put rivets in these areas here where there's going to be a lot of pulling on the pocket. I just think that it just reinforces it a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You don't have to, but I'm going to. And then I'm also going to put some pieces of Decoville back here to make sure the rivet doesn't pull through. Okay, it's time to put the upper lining on. As I mentioned before, this is cut at a little bit of an angle. The shorter edge is going to go against the bag here. So find the center and start there. Find the center of both sides, both long sides here. And when I lay this down, I want the angle, the long edge, to be on the top. So if you're not sure, lay this out. If you want to be 100% sure you're doing it right, and then just fold this down, and then you'll know you're correct. I'm going to line up the center and clip it in place. And since this top lining has the Decoville, that's where I'm going to sew from, is this side right here. You're going to press your seam allowance towards your top lining. It's not going to want to go that way, but make it go that way. And then we're going to top stitch this on. And I'm just making sure that the seam allowance is laying correctly. All right, this is going to be a gorgeous bag. I'm excited about it. I'm going to take my key fob and I'm going to just lay it underneath this top lining. And usually when I do this, I don't sew it in this way because I feel like it kind of doesn't lay real pretty. And it bunches, but yet I don't sew it, you can't really sew it straight down. So I kind of sew it at an angle, okay, just so that it'll naturally want to fall. And I'm just going to base this right here so I don't forget to add it, because I tend to do that. Get to the end and say, oh shoot, I forgot to put my key fob in. Okay, so we're going to put our two smaller or shorter edges together here, and first thing I'm going to line up are these edges. So I'm going to make sure they're exactly perfect. Put a clip right there, and that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to put my needle in right there, I'm going to back stitch up and then come back down. So let me just go ahead and clip the rest of this. Cut the bulk out of this seam here. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm literally just going to cut it off. I'm just going to cut the whole thing. Okay, let's get this bottom put on. So we already have the centers marked on our bottom of our bag from when we put our pockets on. You're going to fold your bottom like a taco, like a hot dog, and mark all your centers. Now I know somebody's going to do this wrong, so listen really carefully to this part because this is a little different. You want to make sure when you look at your finished lining piece here, your pockets are the front and the back. Somebody's going to want to put this seam in the back, but the seam goes on the side. So when you put the bottom of your bag in, you're going to line up one of these long edges on a side with the pocket. Same thing, this other long edge is going to go on the side with the pocket. And then your short edges, one of them is going to go against the seam. And if you notice, we're doing this exactly the same way we did the bottom of the bag. We're just putting a couple clips on each one, on each mark here, and then we're going to have to clip our straight edge, which is going to be the bag itself, the lining piece itself, to get the bottom to fit in. Okay, once you have your bottom sewn on, you want to go ahead and trim these seam allowances. Okay, so here's the lining, and we're not going to turn it, of course. I'm going to go ahead and put some of this double-sided tape along the top, just like we did the main bag. So we're going to fold this over right on top of the decoville. Give us a nice crisp edge. Okay, so let's fold this over. I'm going to fold it right against the decoville. Okay. Look at how beautiful that lining is. Just love linen linings. So at step 5, this is our drawstring connector. So I drew a line down the middle, put some double-sided tape. I'm just going to go ahead and fold the edges in, and we're going to top stitch down each side. In this case, I'm going to make sure that my edges meet here in the middle. I don't have to leave a space because we're only folding the sides in once. I am going to sew the short edges on this as well. I'm going to make sure these are nice and even because we are going to see one of these edges, sort of. If you turn the drawstring connector over, you'll see it. Okay, so this is what we have, and what we want to do from here is fold this in thirds. Now, if you want to mark the center and then, you know, mark the third mark, you can do that. But I'm just going to kind of eyeball this, and it should fold just like this in thirds. Okay. You can do one of two things here. You can either place a rivet here or you can stitch down the center. I'm going to just stitch down the center. Now you do want to be careful because if you stitch on one side more than the other side, one drawstring might be a little tighter than the other. So you might want to measure it and just kind of give yourself a mark to see where the center is. Or you can just eyeball it, just wherever your comfort level is. All right, so let me show you this. We're just going to stitch this right now. Now what I'm going to do is stitch down one side, turn it around, stitch down the other side. I'm going to try to stitch between the two existing stitch lines here. Okay, I don't necessarily want to go off the edge. And then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to stitch right on top of that line. Okay, and that's your drawstring connector. Now, if you want to edge coat this, you can certainly do that side there. So we're going to do just like we do a strap. We're going to draw a line down the center and fold the edges in. Now we are only going to go down one side. We're not going to try to go down two sides. So you can do this almost a little bit more in the middle if you want to. This one stitch. Okay, so put this aside. We're going to go back to the main part of the bag here. And we're going to go ahead and position our shoulder strap. So hopefully by now your shoulder strap is been edge coated and the edge coat is dry and you're ready to work with it. So let's go ahead and grab that and we'll continue on. Okay, so what we want to do is to go ahead and stitch this on. Now I'll give you the measurement in the pattern as to how far down to go. And what you need to remember is that we're going to be putting grommets here. So you want the grommets you're going to want this shoulder strap to hide those grommets. And you want to make sure when you stitch low enough that you're not going to interfere with pulling this back and putting your grommets in. Now, as an alternative, you can do a bag kind of like what I showed you in the introduction where there was rivets. And in that case, you could actually rivet through the shoulder strap, the bag, and the lining. So that might be the easier route if you don't have a piece of decorative hardware that you want to use. Maybe just use rivets and you can actually skip this step. Let's go ahead and at that point you can get your lining in, put your grommets in, and then just rivet this on afterwards. But I'm going to show you how to do this way in case you do have, some kind of piece of hardware you want to use. So depending on your hardware is going to depend on where you place it here on the bag. If you've got a round piece, you can kind of center it. If you have something that's oblong, you may want to, put it this way, or you may want to put it this way, which I would probably suggest if you have something oblong, again, so you don't get in the way of the grommets. I'm going to just kind of look to see where I want this and make a little mark so that I know where to put my stitching, because I want this hardware piece to cover and hide my stitches. But I don't want just this hardware piece by itself holding this on, because it may break or fall off, or something might happen. So I really want to put some stitching in there as well. So looking at this, I can kind of see about where I want it, and I'm just going to put a mark here. I'm going to stitch, and then I can stitch about an inch down from there as well. So I'm just going to kind of make two marks here. And I know if I stitch on these two marks, when I put my hardware right in between those two marks, it'll cover it. Okay? So you have to kind of play with what you have, but I think that this will kind of help you determine where that's going to be. So I know where the center of my bag is from the pattern in my faux leather here. And I'm going to just clip this on using, measure down here and make a mark. Okay, so I know it needs to go right about there. And I want to make sure that the center of my shoulder strap is lined up in obviously the center of the bag. So let me clip. And you can do a couple things here. You can use a cylinder arm machine to put this in and stitch, obviously that would be super easy. Or it's big enough that you can, and I'm going to show you that it's big enough, you can just fold this in and go ahead and stitch down. So I'm just going to lift my foot here. And then come down and do it again. Okay. So this bag is definitely big enough that you're going to be able to top stitch it without a problem. All right, so I'm going to take these off, and I want to be able to see my grommet marks here, which I do see, and I want to make sure that the shoulder strap is going to cover those. If it looks like it's not going to, maybe you cut yours a little thinner, just cheat your grommets in towards each other a little bit. Okay, I have my hole punched here. One thing I do want to tell you is if you use a single screw or one grommet here, you want to make sure you do 2 stitch lines, because otherwise your shoulder strap is going to probably twist when you go to pick it up. Now I'm going to put just a little bit of Loctite, just a dab of it here in this hole, so that it'll lock my screw in. And this is just thread locker, Loctite thread locker. You can get this at Home Depot, Lowe's, any place like that. All right. So from here, we're going to go ahead and drop our lining in. I always like to have my zipper pocket in the back. So I'll put it in the back. And your seam is going to be on the side, okay? So what you want to do from here is to go ahead and before you do your grommets, we want to top stitch this bag together. This is a little different, but I'm actually going to start sewing in the front of the bag because it's going to be hidden by this shoulder strap. So that's the best place to start. So I'm just going to stick this under. So you hold your threads, and here we go. Now right here I have a seam, and it's where we have the side seam to the front, and I don't want that to mess up my vinyl. So I'm actually going to put something underneath the foot so that my foot doesn't eat it once I get there. Just in case. Stick something right underneath there. I'm here at another one, so I'm going to lift my foot. Okay, so now we have the back top stitched. And from here, you want to go ahead and set your grommets. Now, I did do a video last week to show you how to set grommets, so go ahead and refer to that video. I'll link it below, and set your grommets and we'll finish up. Okay, I have all my grommets set, and as you see, here's the shoulder strap, and when you pull this down, you have 2 grommets behind there. So just make sure before you set these that the shoulder strap is going to cover it, okay? The other thing before you set your grommets is just kind of make sure, take a ruler and make sure that they're all lined up, because the first thing we did in the preparation stage was to mark these grommets, and sometimes if our seams are off a little bit, these might be off. So just take a ruler and lay it down and just make sure everything looks okay before you set these. So from here, we're just going to finish the bag. So I'm going to take my drawstring and we're going to thread it through what is the front first. Okay, so this is the side with the shoulder strap. I just want to make sure that it is about even. And then I'm just going to proceed to thread it in and out. Okay. From here, we're going to take our drawstring holder, or cincher, let's say. I'm going to make sure nothing is twisted. And I'm going to slide this on. Now, when you do, you may need the help of an awl to get it in. It's going to be a tight fit. It should be. But you should be able to slide it easily as well, because you don't want to be struggling with this, you know, or else you're not going to enjoy your bag. So okay, from here what I do is, you really don't need a lot of extra when the bag is open. So I'm going to just kind of maybe cut them about here. We're going to knot these, so don't cut them too much, but you do want to go ahead and cut them even. Now, the knot should prevent the stitching from coming out. However, if you want to take your sewing machine and just go over the edge of these stitches just to make sure it doesn't, you can certainly do that. So from here, let's go ahead and put our rectangle ring on our shoulder strap. So you're going to just slide it in, fold it to the back, and you can either stitch this or put a rivet. I'm just going to rivet this on. You could certainly do both as well. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball. Okay. Then we're going to take our adjustable strap. On one end, we want to put our strap adjuster. So feed it through, bend it back over the middle slide. And I'm going to go ahead and put a rivet in here as well. Okay, so before I attach the actual swivel clip, I'm going to go ahead and set these 2 rivets. Okay, my rivets are set, so on the other end of the strap connector, I'm going to go ahead and put my swivel clip, slide it on, and then feed this back up through. and then through the other side of the strap adjuster. Now this faux is a little bit thicker, so you're definitely going to need a wide mouth strap adjuster here. Otherwise you're not going to be able to adjust. It's going to be a little tough. So put the other side of your strap adjuster through your D-ring, excuse me, your rectangle ring, and I'm going to go ahead and rivet that on. Okay, I'm going to go set this rivet, and then we'll be done. Okay, rivet is set. Now I'm going to tell you, when I opened up my little hardware case, I realized I forgot to put my feet in, my purse feet. So I'm going to make sure I notate in the video when to add these. I forgot them. So this bag is not going to have purse feet. So we're just going to close the bag. You're just going to pull this, and it's going to take your vinyl a little bit. You're going to just have to kind of train it to where you want it to sit, but it doesn't take long to do. Okay, I'm going to just pull this up. And then I'm just going to knot my ends. So I'm just going to pull it down. And if you have hardware to put down here, you can certainly do that. That would be really pretty. The Brahmin bag did not have knots. I mean, excuse me, did not have hardware. Okay, and then you just take your strap adjuster, or your swivel clip, and just clip it on your D-ring. And you're done. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial. I hope that you enjoy making this bag. This is a classy bag. I mean, this is, my husband says that of like all the bags I've made, this is his favorite. I'm actually carrying around a gray version of this right now, and I get more compliments for it. It's just absolutely beautiful. So again, you're just going to have to, as this gets full, but you see it's not going to take a lot of training. I mean, it's very good. Now, if for some reason you feel like this is too tight, you can do a couple things. I actually put a little bit of machine oil on my vinyl on one of my bags, and it worked great. The other thing is you could certainly make this a little bit bigger if you need to. Okay? Gorgeous. Love, love, love this bag. I have made a bunch of them. Okay? So I will link the pattern below. I hope you, like I said, I hope you enjoy making it. I really appreciate all of you. And until next time, happy sewing.